Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we grab a whole stack of sources and, well, we pull out the key insights so you can get up to speed fast.
And today, we're diving into something you see literally every single day.
Price. Yeah, you probably don't give it a second thought most times, but it's way more than just a number on a tag.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's strategy, it's psychology. It even reflects how the world's changing around us.
It's amazing how complicated something so simple looks.
It really is. Price isn't static. It's an active decision companies make with like a whole web of factors behind it.
Exactly. And to show just how strategic and maybe even extreme pricing can be, let's talk about Ryanair.
Ryanair, a classic case study.
Their founder, Michael O'Leary, he had this famous line, "Fares are free and €10 is sexy." I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
They'd often sell half their seats for free, their average one-way fare. Just 52 years.
Incredible. And the key, really, the absolute core of their model was how they just ruthlessly cut costs on the main service, the flight itself.
Right.
So they could offer those rock-bottom fares. But the real money, well, that came from all the extras.
The ancillary revenue, like £9.50 for a checked bag, right?
And £5.50 for a hot dog, £3.50 for a bottle of water on the plane. That's where the profit margin really was.
Such a different way of thinking about it. And they streamlined everything. Over 99% of tickets sold online, cutting out intermediaries.
Huge cost-saving that.
Serving, what, 58 million passengers?
Yeah.
Across 150 airports. They call them Walmart with wings.
Yeah, that nickname fits pretty well.
So that Ryanair example, it's not just interesting, it really highlights why we need to understand pricing. So this deep dive today, it's not just about the numbers.
Yeah.
We're peeling back the layers. How are these strategies actually put together? How does our own psychology, play into it?
And how do companies keep adjusting their prices in such a fast-moving market?
Let's start with just looking beyond that price tag you see on the shelf. Because price isn't just for, like, a new phone, is it?
Not at all. It's fundamental to how we exchange value. Think about it as rent for your flat, tuition for college,
Fees for a lawyer, rates for your electricity.
tolls on the motorway, commission for a salesperson. It takes so many forms.
And historically, it wasn't always a fixed number, was it?
No, for most of history, prices were negotiated, haggled over between the buyer and the seller.
So when did that change? When did we get the price tag?
Well, the big shift came with the one-price policy. Early retailers, like Tiffany & Co., funnily enough.
Tiffany,
Really? Yeah, they were pioneers. They introduced this, well, at the time, radical idea that everyone pays the same listed price. No haggling.
That must have seemed revolutionary. Simplified things hugely, I bet.
It did. But then, fast forward to our time, and the internet just blew everything up again.
Right. Suddenly buyers have, like, perfect information almost.
Pretty much. You can compare prices from thousands of sellers instantly. Check prices on your phone while you're in the store.
You can even name your own price on sites like Priceline or eBay.
Exactly. And access special deals, discount codes. It really shifted the power dynamic towards the buyer.
And then layering on top of that, you had the 2008-2009 recession.
That, plus technology, really pushed new kinds of consumer behavior forward. People got, well, more frugal.
And we saw the rise of the sharing economy.
Yeah, that's a key point. Consumers started realizing they could get value differently through, collaborative consumption.
Like renting a car for a few hours with the Zipcar instead of owning one.
Or renting out a spare room on Airbnb. It's about extracting more value from assets, sharing access, rather than just outright ownership.
And that definitely changes how we think about paying for things, how we perceive value.
Absolutely. It fundamentally impacts our relationship with price.
Which brings us neatly to how our brains actually process all this. Because it's clearly not just simple arithmetic, right? We don't just see a number and react logically.
Well, far from it. Our perception of price is massively influenced by context. What our friends say, what we read online, past experiences.
So what's actually happening psychologically?
Well, a really big factor is the idea of a reference price. We all have these internal benchmarks.
Like what we expect something should cost.
Exactly. Or we use external cues, maybe a competitor's price, or that regular retail price you see crossed out during a sale. We compare the price we see to these reference points.
So like you said, if you're used to luxury spending, maybe a $500 monthly fee for some exclusive club doesn't shock you because your internal reference point is already high.
Precisely. It's all relative to that frame of reference.
Makes sense.
And then there's another layer, price quality inferences. We often use price as a kind of mental shortcut.
To judge quality.
Yeah, especially for things where quality is hard to judge objectively beforehand. Think perfume or designer clothes, maybe even wine sometimes.
Higher price equals better quality in our minds.
Often, yes. Or at least higher desirability. It's a powerful psychological signal.
Okay, and what about those prices that end in 9? Like $299 instead of $300. That still works, doesn't it? It feels like a bargain.
It absolutely does. It's called charm pricing, and it's incredibly effective. The reason seems to be that we process prices from left to right.
Ah, so the $299 anchors our perception.
Right. It feels like it's in the $200 range, not the $300 range, even though it's only a dollar difference.
Yeah.
It just feels cheaper, like a discount.
It's amazing how that little psychological nudge works. No wonder regulators keep an eye on how companies use those tactics.
The Federal Trade Commission, for example, watches out for deceptive uses, like inflating the original price just to make the 9 ending look like a bigger discount.
Okay, so we understand the psychology a bit better and the changing landscape, but how do companies actually set a price? It can't just be random guessing.
Definitely not. There's usually a structured approach, a kind of roadmap. Typically, it's a 6-step framework.
6 steps. Okay, what are they?
Right. Step 1, select the pricing objective. Step 2, determine demand. Step 3, estimate costs. Step 4, analyze competitors' costs, prices, and offers. Step 5, select a pricing method. And finally, step 6, select the final price.
Got it. A methodical process. So let's unpack that. Step 1, the objective. What kind of goals are we talking about?
Well, they can vary a lot. Sometimes it's just about survival, maybe in a really tough market. Just covering costs and staying afloat is the short-term goal.
Okay, basic survival. What else?
Maximizing current profit is a common one. Or maybe maximizing market share, getting the biggest piece of the pie.
That sounds like market penetration pricing. Coming in low to grab volume.
Exactly. Or you could go the opposite way. Maximum market skimming.
Skimming? What's that?
That's where you set a high initial price, often for a new, innovative product. You skim the profits from early adopters who are willing to pay more before competitors catch up, and you have to lower it.
Ah, okay, like early tech gadgets sometimes?
Personally.
Yeah.
And another objective could be product quality leadership, where you deliberately price high to signal premium quality and exclusivity.
Right. So once you know why you're pricing, what's next? Step 2 was demand.
Determining demand, yeah. You need to understand how sensitive your customers are to price changes.
Price sensitivity versus price elasticity, right? I remember those terms.
Elasticity is the key metric.
Yeah.
It measures how much demand changes for every 1% change in price. If demand is highly elastic, a small price cut could lead to a big jump in sales.
But if it's inelastic, cutting the price might just hurt your profits without boosting sales much.
Exactly. So marketers need to estimate these demand curves. They use tools like surveys, price experiments, even statistical analysis of past sales data.
Gotcha. Then step 3, estimating costs. This seems straightforward, but I guess there are nuances.
Well, you need to understand your fixed costs, rent, salaries, things that don't change with production levels, and your variable costs, like raw materials that do.
Total cost is just those two added up.
Right. But the really interesting part here, strategically, is the experience curve, or sometimes called the learning curve.
Ah, the idea that costs go down as you make more stuff.
Precisely. As a company gains more experience producing something, its average cost per unit tends to fall. They get more efficient, processes improve, workers get faster.
Like the example you mentioned, Samsung with their tablets. The more they made, the cheaper each one became to produce, relatively speaking.
Exactly. And understanding that curve is vital for long-term pricing strategy, especially in manufacturing. It can give you a real cost advantage over newer competitors.
Okay, so you know your goal, you understand demand, you've estimated costs. Step 4 is looking sideways at the competition.
You got it. Analyze competitors. What are their costs likely to be? What are their prices? What value do they offer? You need to benchmark yourself. Pricing doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Makes sense. Which leads to step 5, choosing the actual method for setting the price. You said there are different ways.
Yes, several common methods. The simplest is probably markup pricing.
Just adding a standard percentage on top of the cost.
Yeah. If your toaster costs $10 to make, and you want, say, a 20% markup on the selling price, you'd calculate the price needed to achieve that. Or sometimes it's a markup on cost. It's simple, often used in retail.
Seems easy, but maybe not very strategic. Doesn't really account for demand or competition much.
That's the downside. Then there's target return pricing. Here, you set the price based on achieving a specific return on investment, or ROI.
Like in your toaster example earlier, if you invested $1 million, expect to sell 50,000 units and want a 20% ROI.
You'd calculate the price per toaster needed to hit that $200,000 profit target. It links price directly to financial goals.
Okay. What else?
Well, moving away from cost-based methods, there's perceived value pricing. This is crucial.
Basing the price on what the customer thinks it's worth.
Exactly. Not what it costs you, but the value the buyer perceives based on the brand image, features, service, everything. This requires really understanding your customer.
That sounds like where strong branding pays off.
Definitely. And related to that are value pricing and everyday low pricing, or EDLP.
Like Walmart. Not necessarily the absolute cheapest on everything, but consistently low prices without constant sales.
Right. EDLP aims to offer good quality at a fair price, consistently. It builds trust and reduces the need for shoppers to hunt for deals. Value pricing is similar, focusing on a high quality to price ratio.
Then there's just following the herd.
Hey, sort of. That's going rate pricing. You base your price largely on what competitors are charging, rather than on your own costs or demand.
Common for commodities, maybe? Like gasoline?
Yes, where products are very similar, companies tend to charge similar prices. And finally, there's auction-type pricing.
Which the internet has made huge, obviously, eBay being the giant example.
Absolutely. You have English auctions, the most common online type, with ascending bids. Highest bidder wins.
And Dutch auctions.
Those are descending. The auctioneer starts with a high price and lowers it until someone jumps in and accepts the price. Used often for perishables, like flowers in the Netherlands.
It's a fascinating range of methods. So after all that analysis and choosing a method, we get to step 6, selecting the final price.
Right. And this isn't just plugging a number into a formula. It involves considering the company's overall pricing policies, maybe gain and risk-sharing options with business customers.
And how the price interacts with other marketing activities like advertising or distribution, it's the final strategic decision point.
Exactly. It pulls everything together.
Now, a really important point you touched on earlier, companies hardly ever just set one price and leave it, right? They adapt it constantly.
Constantly. Think about geographical pricing. Prices often vary depending on the location, the country.
Shipping costs, local market conditions, taxes.
Right. Sometimes it even involves different payment methods like barter or counter trade, especially in international deals.
And then there are all the discounts and allowances we see everywhere.
Oh yeah. Quantity discounts, buy more, pay less per unit. Functional discounts for distributors or retailers who perform certain tasks.
Seasonal discounts, like you mentioned, clearing out swimsuits in September.
Promotional allowances to reward dealers for participating in ad campaigns. Cash rebates for consumers, low-interest financing deals, extended warranties, all ways to adjust the effective price.
And that classic psychological discounting tactic was $359, now $299.
Still powerful.
Yeah.
Though, as we said, regulators watch that to make sure the WASP price isn't fictitious.
So all these adjustments lead into differentiated pricing. Yeah. Charging different prices for basically the same thing depending on various factors.
Exactly. You can differentiate by customer segment, think student or senior discounts. By product's form, maybe a slightly fancier version costs more. By location, like theater seats. Or by time.
Time is a big one, like happy hour prices.
Or matinee movie tickets. But the classic example is the airline industry's yield management system.
Ah, yes, the ever-changing flight prices. It feels completely random sometimes.
It's not random, it's highly calculated. Airlines use complex algorithms to adjust prices for the same seat on the same flight based on how far in advance you book, demand patterns, day of the week, remaining capacity.
All aimed at maximizing the revenue from each flight, filling the plane at the best possible mix of prices.
Precisely. It's dynamic pricing in action.
Which also applies to initiating price changes. Companies don't just set prices and forget them. Sometimes they cut prices. Why would they do that?
Several reasons. Maybe they have excess plane capacity they need to utilize, or their market share is falling and they want to stimulate demand, or maybe they want to dominate the market through lower prices.
But cutting prices isn't without risks, is it?
No. There are significant potential pitfalls. You can fall into a price trap.
Meaning
Customers start to assume your product quality is low because the price is low. Or you might find you only attract bargain hunters, a fragile market share, with no real customer loyalty. They'll leave as soon as someone else is cheaper.
And you could trigger a price war you can't win.
Exactly. The shallow pockets problem. If your competitors have more resources, they might outlast you in a price war, driving you out of business.
So cutting prices needs careful thought, What about the opposite initiating price increases?
That happens too. The most common reason is cost inflation, raw materials, labor, energy costs go up, forcing companies to raise prices to maintain margins.
Or sometimes it's simply due to high demand. They can charge more because people are lining up to buy.
It's over demand.
And it's interesting, studies show that even a small price increase, like 1%, if done correctly, can often boost profits significantly more than a 1% increase in volume.
Wow. So how do they implement increases? Just raise the sticker price?
Sometimes. But they might use other tactics too, like delayed quotation pricing, quoting a price only when the product is finished or delivered, or using escalator clauses in contracts that allow price increases based on, say, inflation indexes.
Or unbundling, taking away features that used to be included and charging extra for them.
That's another common one, making the base product seem the same price, but charging for things that were once free.
Okay, last big piece here. Responding to competitors. What happens when your rival cuts their price?
That's a critical moment. First, you have to analyze why they did it. What's their intent? Is it temporary or permanent? Is it an attack on your market share?
Once you figure that out, what are the options? You have several paths. You could just maintain your price, especially if you believe the cut won't hurt you much or is temporary. Or maintain your price, but add value,
Correct.
improve the product, add service, strengthen your brand image.
To justify your higher price.
Exactly. Or you could reduce your price to match or partially match the competitor. Or, perhaps counterintuitively, you could increase your price and improve quality, moving your brand into a more premium position.
Fighting fire with fanciness.
Yeah, something like that.
Hmm.
Or a common tactic is to launch a low-price fighting brand, a separate, cheaper line to compete directly with the price cutter without damaging your main brand's image.
Lots of strategic chess moves there.
Definitely.
So, wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you, the listener? Clearly, pricing is way more than just putting a number on something.
Absolutely. It's this incredibly complex dance between economics, psychology, and strategy. Companies are constantly tweaking and adapting.
It's designed to capture value, sure, but also to shape how you perceive a product and how you behave, all while reacting to a market that never sits still.
It truly is dynamic, which leaves us with a final thought to chew on.
Go on.
Well, given how fast technology and consumer behavior keep changing, how is pricing going to evolve next? Will that one price policy from Tiffany's day eventually just fade away?
Or will we, as consumers, demand even more transparency, more control over what we pay in the future?
Something to think about next time you look at a price tag.
Definitely something to ponder.